territorio caldo, un territorio che funge da destabilizzatore di un'intera area e da destabilizzatore di un'intera idea di Medio Oriente. E allora, visto che anche qui se ne parla molto poco, in questo festival se ne è parlato tanto, ma spesso sugli organi di informazione c'è, diciamo, un'analisi abbastanza veloce, abbastanza a tirar via. Allora vorrei che ci raccontasse qual è la situazione attuale in Iran e quanto questa impatti con i rapporti con l'Occidente, con l'Unione Europea, gli Stati Uniti, la Russia, perché a mio avviso anche questo è un territorio da esplorare con estrema attenzione. Prego, Mano. Il microfono, altrimenti.
Okay, I guess. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you very much for Radio Radicale for organizing this and for the festival to host us. For explaining about Iran, we always need to give a little bit of introduction. Iran has a quite famous history with Italy and Roman Empire, and always Italian look at Iran in a really beautiful way, which is a good sign. But something that most of Italians don't know about Iran, and so many times we mention Iran as Persia. Mentioning Iran as Persia, it is on expense of other national minorities in Iran. So Iran has 5 major national minorities. They have Turks, Kurds, Arab, and Baluchis and Turkmens. And as Laura already mentioned, that's through the combination of minorities making about 70% of the population. And yet we have only in Iran one official language and one official religion. For how I give these numbers that 70% are non-Persian, it is Minister of Education in Iran back in 2012 said that 70% of students when they go to school, Persian, it is not their mother tongue, yet they have to start writing and reading in Persian. So it makes a lot of gap between minority background children and people that the language is Persian in education. Now I will speak a little bit about what happened in Iran recently. Iran lately actually witnessing a period of constant unrest. Public frustration is so big that keeping a stability in the country for Iranian government is a challenge now, especially that they are desperate for European investors so they can come and invest in Iran. So we received 2018 in Iran with the protest all around Iran. But this time, even the expert, they said that this protest was different from what we had in previous times. So what was making this protest different than others was 2 reasons. First, it didn't have a clear leadership, not like Green Movement when we had the leaders and it were famous who they are. And then second, that this time in actually the protests were major in minority region. So minorities in Iran mostly living in the borders of Iran, and then in center we have the ruling minority who are Persian. So we had most of the protests in around of Iran, and then big cities quite were shy in this protest. Well, expert gave 2 explanations why we had less protests in big cities, in the Persian cities, I would have said. First, they say because of security measures, because in Tehran and Mashhad and Isfahan, maybe they have a better security measure, so they could have controlled the protest. And then another reason is the social gap between minorities and the central part of Iran, or Persian inhabitant part of Iran. Well, if you want to go to security explanation, it is not totally true, because minority region like Kurdistan and my region, which I am Ahwazi Arab, an Arab minority in Iran, it is highly controlled by military. So even though we had a lot of big security appearance in the minority region, the protests were higher. But the true reason is the social and economical gap between central part of Iran and minority regions. So why these minorities, they protest higher and bigger in Iran? Because the gap is so big that unemployment, delay national rights, high number of execution, high number of political prisoners, and government-funded racism through media against minorities led to these minorities to reach the stage of explosion, that they cannot handle it anymore. And in addition to that, most of the minorities in the region, they suffer from environmental crisis, really big environmental crisis. In my region, in north of my region, there is a dam that was made next to the Salt Mountain. It was made by IRG, Revolutionary Guard, even though that all the environmentalist activists and experts said that this dam shouldn't be made, but because IRG, the Revolutionary Guard, had the power, they got the project, and then they made this dam. So this dam actually destroyed the area. So the cities around this dam, they were among the biggest protests, and 8 people died. And some cities were in the hand of the people for a couple of days. But European Parliament, a lot of institutions, they misuse the vacation of New Year and the Christmas, and they kept silence. And when Ms. Mogherini gave a statement, it was in the really early morning, and it was really in shy way. And then she asked the both party to keep non-violent. So she actually kind of made the people and the government with all the means that they have in the same level, instead of asking Iranian government to behave. Yes, the extreme centralization of system of governing in Iran and not giving the regions a little bit more autonomous in how rule their areas lead to a really big social gap between minority regions and what's in central Iran. So sometimes the civil demands that happening, for example, in Tehran, not necessarily interest the minorities. For example, lately we really seeing, and everybody knows about the campaign against compulsory hijab. But in minority region, women, they are not really well connected to this campaign. Why? Because when the people in Tehran, they don't have a problem of access drinking water, they can later go and talk about their civil and political rights. But when you go to Baluchistan, 80% of population in Baluchistan, they don't have access to direct water. So the Baluchi woman has to go walk and bring the water. So I don't think for her, standing and taking off her scarf is a priority yet. In Kurdistan, in 2017, end of 2017, and the beginning of 2018, we had a major earthquake. After month and month of earthquake, Iranian government didn't help Kurd minorities that they were in region, and they were still in the mountain of Kurdistan, that famous that we call people living in tent. And even clerks, instead of helping people, they said because these people are sinful, God punished them. So they are again putting people responsible for a natural disaster. And in my region, unfortunately, we have the problem of diversion of water. So from my region, they diverting water toward a desert instead of actually managing water. According to Iranian constitution, diverting water for any reason other than drinking water, it is illegal. But yet, they diverting water from Al-Ahwaz region for the Persian name Khuzestan to industrial and agriculture project in the middle of Iran, which is mostly Persian inhabitant. And now, if we want to look at what European actually do with Iran after nuclear deal, unfortunately, most of the experts that went and visit Iran, they didn't have the right to visit all Iran. They only had the right mostly to visit only Isfahan and Tehran. They rarely visit other parts of Iran because other part of Iran is extremely suffering from crisis that they don't want Europeans to see what's going on in Iran. So the main problem that we have in Iran, that IRG, Revolutionary Guard, taking a lot of development projects, but they don't have any legal binding contract with the Iranian government that they do respect environmental standards in their projects. So Iranian government give the project to the IRG. IRG destroy the environment, and then they come to European and say, we need your fund and experts to do damage control. So now they want to work with the European on three scales: air pollution, water management, and waste management. But yet, experts, they only visited Tehran and Isfahan. They were nowhere to be found around Ahwaz, which from first 6 months of the year, we had only one clean day. It was always full with sandstorm, and the problem is diverting water and drying out the marshlands that they are in the region. And rarely maybe Europeans know about Lake Urumia in Azerbaijan. Sometimes they let them visit that, but never visit, for example, Baluchistan, or rarely visit Kurdistan, which is full of mines after Iraqi-Irani war. And Iran refused to clean these mines on the excuse that Middle East is unstable and I am using it for protecting my borders. And most of the time, the victims of the mines are children in Kurdistan and in my region. So unfortunately, I will conclude here. When the environmentalists, Iranian environmentalists, are in the office and they are working, they know that they are dealing with the government, that they don't give them their civil and political rights. So they have the right to do, or they have in back of the mind to do civil rebellion, to use some nonviolent action against the regime so they can change their policies. And unfortunately, we saw that we had environmentalists that actually died under the torture in the jail recently. We have some environmentalists are in jail. But when European goes to Iran as expert, he doesn't know the complication, and he doesn't feel the responsibility to do anything about the system. And if you ask him, you are actually helping the dictatorship, their engine to work, he say, I am only doing my job. I'm only giving the expertise. But in end of the day, actually, they helping the dictatorship machine works. And again, if we use this European experts and Western experts and funds in helping against waste management, water management, and air pollution only in central part of Iran and only in Persian inhabitant part of Iran, we are actually making more social gap between minorities and between central part of Iran. So in future, actually these policies led to more division in Iran. So then we maybe suffer from civil war, for example, between minority regions that they are extremely poor, and then other regions that actually using the funds to continue and become better and better. And in end of the day, we're gonna have suffer from the overall nation understanding of what's going on in these regions. And unfortunately, Iranian government always use the excuse of secessionism for minorities every time. For example, when minorities in minority region protest for their basic rights, social and economic rights, always Iranian government says that they are secessionists and their actually demands are not legitimate. So helping Iran in this way not only divide the country, also it's going to delay the process of democratization and the chance for Iran to be a democratic state in the region, because I think the way that Iran back in 1979 by Islamic Revolution, we see how Iran affected whole region because Iran became a religious state. We didn't suffer so much about radical Islam. But when Iran became a country that adapted the religion, we start to see this tendency toward radicalization in other countries. So if we get the chance to make Iran a democratic state, there would be a chance for whole Middle East to be more democratic. Thank you very much.
Grazie a Mona Silavi per questa relazione molto interessante che ci consente ancora una volta di aprire una finestra in questo Atlante che stiamo cercando di tracciare. Adesso è il momento di passare la parola a